Straighten the shirt, clear throat. Shuffle the paper like they do on TV. Bev, I think we're just waiting for Oliver. Supposedly he's like a minute away.
Yeah.
He said he was?
Yep.
Wonderful. Yeah, you just may want to announce to everybody since we're streaming
Okay.
and zooming.
Zooming? Yeah, we're just waiting for one more member to arrive, so it's going to take maybe another minute or two, and we'll get started. Okay. It's definitely getting harder to read. I need better glasses. I guess it doesn't matter now. Long enough here.
No.
Okay, we can get started. Welcome to the Sanford Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, November 16th, 2022. This meeting will come to order. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are offered. Please notify the chair if you're unable to see or hear something. Please note if any planning board members have any potential conflicts of interest of which they are aware, they will disclose the conflict prior to the board initiating hearing or action on an application. All persons speaking will be asked to state your name and address and then proceed. At the sole discretion of the chair, public testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For each item, the applicant will be asked to describe the project. Thereafter, the chair will ask proponents of the project to speak, followed by opponents, and then those who are neither for nor against, but who may want to ask a question or make a general comment. Everyone who wants will have an opportunity to speak to the board through the chair. Any questions must go to and through the chair, who will then decide at what point to either ask staff or the applicant to respond. The chair may wait until after testimony has concluded to seek answers to any questions that are raised by the public or board members. Please note any rudeness, uncivil behavior, clapping, cheering, booing, etc. will not be tolerated. These behaviors occur, the chair at his discretion may terminate the hearing and reschedule it for another date. In addition, the chair at his discretion will limit repetitious comments, although it is entirely appropriate for an individual to indicate that he or she agrees with the previous speaker. Prior to closing the public hearing, the chair will ask if there are any new comments. Then the applicant will be allowed to make a single rebuttal in response to the testimony which was provided. Excuse me. Once the public hearing portion of the meeting is closed, the chair will accept no additional public comment. However, a member of the board, at the chair's discretion, may ask the applicant or a member of the public to respond to a question. This will not reopen public comment. Planning board decisions are based solely on whether an applicant has provided sufficient evidence to meet the requirements of local, state, and federal laws. In this regard, public testimony is most effective when it considers the impact of a project in light of Sanford's subdivision, site plan, shoreland zoning ordinances, or other relevant regulations. After the board votes on the merits of each project, it will vote on written findings of fact. Since the findings may substantially affect any appeal rights, and also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending a meeting not leave until the board has adopted the findings for the project you are interested in. After the planning board makes its final decision, any reconsideration by the board must be made at the next regularly scheduled meeting. If anyone wishes to appeal the board's final decision, he or she must do so within 30 days. The city's ordinances and comprehensive plan are available for viewing on the city's website and in the Planning and Development Department's office at 919 Main Street in Sanford.
I'm bringing lunch?
Yep.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a public proceeding. You have the right to see and hear what is happening, and we
What's
welcome public
coming?
participation.
I know you will.
Folks, can you mute your audio on Zoom, please? Thank you.
Oh, wow. Even if you're allergic, that looks so good, it'd be worth dying.
Folks, yeah, can you limit your audio on Zoom, please? Can you mute the audio? Thank you. All right. Going down our agenda, we don't have any minutes for tonight, so we'll move on to our next agenda item. This is new business, file K-18-8. This is a minor subdivision and site plan for 18 Witham Street to develop 2 condominiums built on an existing vacant foundation on property owned by Coastal Oaks LLC and located at 18 Witham Street. And I believe we're just doing the public hearing tonight, is that correct?
That's correct. The Site Plan Review Committee did have a substantial conversation about this project yesterday, but there are a number of issues that need to be resolved, primarily associated with legal documents, and one issue associated with drainage. The committee made a motion after substantial conversation to table the item. As a result, the planning board may not take action this evening. Ordinance requires that there be a recommendation from Site Plan Review Committee before it takes action. For the benefit of the public hearing will be held because it's been advertised and noticed. Following the public hearing, the item will end up being tabled. The public hearing likely will be carried forward to the next meeting when the applicant has prepared adequate responses and gone back before Site Plan Review Committee. Please be careful in giving us your names so that we can record them, and we will let you know when the project will come back up again on the planning board agenda after this evening. But certainly welcome to offer your comments during public hearing tonight.
Okay, is the applicant here tonight to present the project? Okay, thanks.
They're informal.
Hi, good evening, all. My name's Chris McDonald. I'm a civil engineer from BH2M, and I'm here representing Coastal Oaks. With me here tonight is King Weinstein of Coastal Oaks, and he is also, I don't believe he's online here tonight. So the project, let me just, excuse me for a moment here. On the screen, very good. Okay, so thank you very much. The project is located along Main Street, and for all intents and purposes, this project is a fairly straightforward project, complicated by its location and some of the history of the abutting properties. So what we have is up on this corner of the property right here, this is the Sherman-Williams paint store. This is Main Street right here. And towards the back of that parking lot, there's an existing foundation, right now currently unutilized foundation. That foundation is associated with 18 Witham Street. And what the project is proposing is to split off a portion of that existing property and develop that existing foundation as a 2-unit rental property. The property is served by an existing right-of-way. There's a 20-foot right-of-way that runs right here along the southern side of that Sherman-Williams parking lot. That right-of-way has been existing for many years and is associated with a former road that used to go through the Sherman-Williams parking lot. And that right-of-way was kind of redone, and I can't remember the exact dates, but it was redone a while ago to provide access to these properties. This property right here on the corner currently uses that right-of-way to access their driveway. So this is a site plan and subdivision. So what's happening is that the applicants are proposing to split off a piece of the existing property to encompass the foundation, and then to also provide an area for the water main to be installed. The existing property has a 20-foot frontage along Main Street, and given the zoning in this area, there is no minimum requirement for frontage, just simply that there is frontage along Main Street. And so what the project proposes is to take that 20 feet of frontage and divide it in half to provide 10 feet for each property. And what that will do is that will provide an area for the water main to be extended to the project. The other thing as far as utilities go is sewer. And what the project proposes is to connect to an existing sewer service for 18 Witham Street with a new lateral that will connect. And we're proposing to have cleanouts at each end of these pipes so that in the future those could be maintained and cleaned out if there is any sort of issue or any sort of clogging. As far as access and parking is concerned, the project proposes to include 4 new parking spaces in front of the garage. This is effectively in the area that the garage doors were proposed to originally be. So there is some history, at least, of some amount of gravel area and something like that in order to access the former garage. With that, that's kind of a general overview of the project. Again, you know, it's relatively straightforward as far as developing the existing foundation. But again, with the history of rights-of-way and things like that, there is some complications as far as that access. But there is access being granted to the project. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay. I'm going to guess there might be some questions a little bit later on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I'll declare the public hearing open. If anybody wants to speak on behalf of the project. If you want to speak, yeah, come up to the podium, just state your name. And we do have 5 minutes available for each person who wants to speak.
My name is Matt Leck. I'm the owner of 560 Main, which I don't know, the map's gone, but I was just curious if that, so we own to the right of what that frontage is, if you're on Main Street, and I was just curious if that was owned land or an easement that goes between our building and the one next to it. That was my question, I guess.
Okay.
If that was an owned piece of property. I thought when we bought our property that there was a right-of-way and an easement through our property, but not actually owned land.
Okay. Are you making a note of that question, Beth?
And then just for clarification, you're asking if the right-of-way is owned or if there's an easement?
The part that he is suggesting to run the water line through,
Yep.
our really only concern is, obviously that's a shared entrance for what would be, well, there's 2 properties there, and we just, for interrupting business to the business that's in our property, that's really our main concern. We're not trying to shut somebody down, we're just curious about like how long the ground will be open, that type of thing, for the business that's in our building.
Okay. We'll see if we can get an answer for you.
Sounds great.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody else would like to speak? Please do.
Hi, I'm Sue Pierce. My husband and I are purchasing 554 Main Street. So basically the same questions that Matt just had, and we don't close until December 6th. So I'm hoping that we have input on how this project might go, because we're going to start demo over there and putting businesses in as soon as possible to get that building a little cleaned up. So we just kind of want to stay in the loop. if there are going to be final decisions on when the parking lot gets opened, if it does, for the utilities and stuff like that.
Is that the old Gentle Dental property?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we're,
And what was your name again?
Sue Pierce. Sue Pierce?
Sue Seer, thank you.
No, Pierce. Pierce.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think that was all the questions I had, so.
What kind of input were you looking to have on it?
Basically the same thing that Matt said, just curiosity on, I did talk to a lawyer about this space, and there is a right-of-way there. We're not 100% that it's been carried through on his deed. So I'm kind of trying to see what our rights are, what his rights are. I mean, we're very open to working with everyone. It's just, if it is a project that he's looking to do, we'd probably be starting our project right around the same time, because it's all spring stuff. So basically just want to work together and understand exactly what's going to happen or what's being proposed to happen.
Okay. Great, very good, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to speak on behalf of the application? Any comments against? General comments of any kind? And I don't see this, anybody else online? Let's see.
Pat Kelly may want to speak. Pat is the owner of the represents the owner of the Sherwin-Williams property.
Okay, Pat Kelly, I see you're online right now. Did you want to make a comment on this project?
Hello. Yes, apologies. I was just joining in now. I was able to make comments at the site planning committee meeting yesterday. And we're willing to work with the applicant to resolve some issues about access through the parking lot. Those negotiations will need to be undertaken here in order to get us and our tenant, Sherwin-Williams, on board with the proposal.
Okay. All right, very good, thanks. Any other comments? Did we receive any written comments to read into the record?
No, no written comments.
Did we get one from Parks and Rec?
Well, not for public hearing. Yeah, I passed out this, that would be considered a staff comment, and I shared that. It wasn't in your packet, so I put a hard copy on your desk this evening. I was thinking that before you close the public hearing, perhaps you want to see if the applicant could respond to those questions in case they generate any additional ones.
That's what I was going to try and get back to that.
We want to keep the public hearing open, don't we?
Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to suggest it was going to be closed, but before you
This is coming back
continue
to
the
us.
public hearing.
Continuous.
Thank you. If I could have the plans brought back on the screen, thank you very much. I believe the questions have come with these two properties kind of on either side of that 20-foot strip of land. I guess basically to clarify, the way that this piece of property is currently situated, it's kind of shaped like, almost like a little bit of an L or a C. So there is actually property belonging to 18 Witham Street that extends to Main Street. And the way that it is currently set up is that there is easements on across the 20-foot right-of-way and then to the south of the 20-foot right-of-way that are kind of double-sided easements, if you will, that this property grants, this property is granted rights to go across this property, and then this property is granted rights to go across that property. So you can kind of see there's two, on top of the 20-foot strip of land, there's also two easements to allow traffic back and forth through that area and to allow use of that entrance. And that is not proposed to change with this project. Those easements will be carried forward. One thing that was identified in the initial comments from the planning department was that there was a question about the easement over this 20-foot strip to the former Evergreen Real Estate property. And it's not clear that when this Evergreen real estate property was split from the 18 Witham property, that there was a right-of-way granted to Evergreen to go across that 20-foot strip of property. So we're currently undertaking some review of that to see if we can trace back these rights-of-way, to see if they trace back to the deed. And if not, the applicants will be reaching out to the property owners to see how best to move forward through that. But that was an area that was identified to be a little bit gray at first. And again, you know, I spoke to a little bit of the history of these projects where some of these deeds have been granted to numerous property owners that the names no longer match up to. So it's a little bit of a puzzle to put these together, but I think we've been able to at least identify where we have known rights-of-way. And then some of these other ones, that's one of the reasons why this was tabled yesterday, was to just try to clear up that issue. But I should say that there is there's no intention to block these areas off. Answering the question about utility installation, there would be some amount of time that would be required to perform that. You know, this is a simple 2-inch water line installation, so we're not talking about having a large area open for it or anything like that. You know, the duration of this should just be a couple of days for that initial installation from Main Street to the back of the property off the existing pavement. So there should be minimal interruptions, and you know, there may be a gravel surface in there for a short time, depending on the time of year this is installed and if it's appropriate to pave. But the intention is to basically restore that area to existing conditions once the water line's in place.
Does that answer your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. I actually did have one other item that I wanted to bring to the board's attention, if it's appropriate to bring that up. And Beth may be able to speak to this as well. There was a question about the drainage regulations in the city, and we got an initial comment on the stormwater model that may change the results to show a de minimis amount of runoff increase from this project, where the code is suggesting that it should be equal to the existing condition. It's a very small change and a minor increase, but I wanted to at least bring this to the board's attention tonight and see if we could get some resolution on how best to proceed with stormwater modeling. Is that anything that we can discuss tonight, Beth?
Probably not today. I did not get a chance to get back into the ordinance to dig through that.
Okay.
So essentially, the issue is that there is, as Chris pointed out, there is a very small increase in the rate of runoff post-development compared to pre-development. The ordinance requires that the post-development runoff rate be no greater. It's a very small amount. There are really two issues that Matthew and I need to explore. One, and actually Jamie will be part of the discussion as well for the piece that I'm going to work on. So the question is whether the planning board has the authority to waive that standard or not. And so I can't give you a resolution on that, but I will by the time we get a little bit further along. And then the other question, or the other issue related to this, is that Matthew remembered and expressed at the meeting yesterday that we have had this situation occur in the past, and that it might have been classified as a de minimis amount, and therefore action could happen. And so Matthew's going to explore that so we can figure out whether there's precedent there. And then I'll work with Jamie on the interpretation of the ordinance to see whether or not the board has the authority to waive. We did have a discussion about some alternatives if in fact they can't be waived. We're obviously, because it's such a small amount of increase, we're looking at relatively low cost, low disturbance options as a way to handle it. And so we did have a pretty good discussion about that yesterday, and I think we're all kind of want to figure out the answer to the question that Chris is posing now, so that he'll know how to proceed.
Thank you. There was one other quick point that I did want to raise while in this initial introduction to the project. There's an existing snowmobile and ATV trail that kind of runs basically in parallel to Main Street, comes around the side of the building, then hooks around the Sherman-Williams building. And just to be clear on that, there's no intention to shut that trail down for any sort of long-term timing. Most of the interruptions would be with the installation of the water line and sewer lines. And again, it should just be small disruptions. We are working with the Snowmobile Trail Club to pull together a revised, they call it a permit, but it's basically a document that allows travel over the property. And we'll be working with them to make sure that that's continued. So we have no intention on shutting the trail down for any length of time, really.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Any comments on the planning board? No? Seeing none, I guess we can table the public hearing, and we'll pick this up again when the application comes back to us. Okay, we need a vote on that table, right?
Not on continuing the public hearing, but on
Table
tabling
it.
further discussion,
Right,
yes.
table. Yes, I'll make a motion that we table the discussion. Second. Okay.
And then, I'm sorry, who is the second? Tom. So Lenny and then Tom.
Okay, all in favor, show of hands. We got 5, none opposed. Okay, next. Thanks for coming in tonight, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, old business, this is a request, file R19-215, this is a major site plan for Pine Tree Waste. This is map R19, lot 215, to extend the deadline for a substantial start of construction of a major site plan to expand existing maintenance and truck parking into adjacent undeveloped parcel at 19 Clear Zone Drive. Any comments for us, Beth?
Yes, so the planning board approved I believe it was, yes, it was a major site plan for Pine Tree Waste on November 17, 2021. The requirement in the ordinance is that a substantial start of construction has to be initiated within 1 year of that date, but the ordinance under Section 280-16-10 provides the option to extend that deadline for up to another year, as long as the request is received before the expiration, before we reach that date of November 17th. Obviously, we haven't met that date. They also have put in a request. So the applicant has requested a 1-year extension of the site plan approval to November 17, 2023. The explanation is that the extension is needed due to unforeseen delay in the project timeline associated with Maine DEP site law process, restrictions on site clearing, the time of when you can go in there and do that work, contractor availability, and staffing turnover. So this is in order for your action if you should so choose to do so. And I believe Kyle Jacobson is here representing the applicant. He's available on Zoom.
Hi, Kyle, did you want to make a comment?
Beth summed it up very well. We have a contractor in place right now. We're hoping to begin work right after Thanksgiving, but we wouldn't meet the 1-year deadline for substantial starting of the project. So we're requesting the 1-year extension and expect to have all construction done on site by this time next year.
Okay, any comments on the planning board? None? I'll make a motion that we grant the extension.
Second.
Okay,
So that was Lenny and Tom.
any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor? Show of hands, 5, none opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Okay. Old business. Mineral extraction, zoning text and map amendment to solicit public input on proposed draft amendments of Chapter 280, the zoning and land use table, and this is a continuation of the public hearing that we had at our last meeting. Any comments before we start?
I have not had a chance to work any further on this. You'll remember at the last work session, the city manager requested that the planning board slow down just a little bit to give me the opportunity to finalize a grant application, which is due I'm hoping to get it done before the end of this week. And it's a pretty good thing that he asked that, because I've spent probably 75% of my time over the last 3 days working on that application, and I probably am going to need virtually all of tomorrow to finish it up before I can make submission. So nothing really has been going on. There has been some email interchange from one of the industry reps asking some questions about the intention of the section of the ordinance regarding no new pits in water supply protection areas. And I'm sorry, I was supposed to text Dave Parent to say we were starting this item, but I obviously have not done that. Dave ultimately, after a couple of emails back and forth, suggested that it was not appropriate to continue the conversation over email, and suggested that it should come back to a full planning board meeting. And so that kind of terminated the conversation. I expect you're going to hear more about that. When I do have the time to sort of dig in and pull, do some more work on this, I will make sure that that's part of the conversation that you're aware of. I do believe that there's at least one person here this evening who does want to testify at the continued public hearing.
Sure. Just a reminder, it's 5 minutes per speaker. Who is, did you want to speak? Dana, yeah. I'm trying to remember your name, Dana. I should remember. How can I forget?
I'll say it into the microphone.
Mr. Peterson.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dana Peterson, and I'm I was a member of the task force, along with some other folks that are here in front of me that developed the ordinance. Since that time, there has been, as you all know, through work sessions, it has been in flux quite a bit. And I'm, at this point, not really certain exactly what sorts of things that we talked about in the task force committee are in or not in the present proposed ordinance. So I would like to ask some of those clarification questions. Now, I have 4 of them, Lenny, and I would like to keep the 5 minutes. I'm not sure I can, but would you like them one at a time and then react to it, or plow through all 4 at once?
Probably be more time efficient if we went through all 4 at once, but.
Okay, all right. My first clarification is what is in the ordinance for reclamation to facilitate the appropriate reuse of the property after it is closed? We had a lot of extensive conversation in committee that the reclamation plan should prep or facilitate the property to be able to turn it over to another use that is acceptable in that zone when it is complete. And that would be obviously a concern of the planning board, that uses are continued to the property, has another reuse after the gravel pit has come and gone. Looking at the wording, I don't find that stated in particular, and so I have 2 suggestions that I would like to recommend. One is was in the old 280-15 6.3-12, which was entirely struck. It said, upon the expiration of any permit or termination of operations, the applicant agrees to implement a suitable plan for reclamation of said site as approved at the time of approval. I would like to reinstate that by taking out upon exploration of any point of, with by the time of termination of operations, the applicant agrees to implement a suitable plan for reclamation of said site as approved at the time of approval or as thereafter amended. I put this in because I'm reminded by Mark Curtis in our task force meeting that an operator doesn't always know at the time they start a permit application what the ultimate reclamation and reuse might want to be when they're finished with it. But this would allow for, would require them to make a statement at the beginning, because if that holds all the way through, then they just implement that reclamation plan. But if they decide near the end there's a more cost-effective way to reuse the project, they can come back as in the thing and amend it with you, and you get to agree on that. Also with that,
I just want to make sure you have time enough to get through all 4 of your points.
well, if I don't, then you know, I can come back. I have put all of these in writing
Do we have that?
to the thing, but I haven't up until now had a chance to getting this out to you for your consideration. When we get to 230-15-6 F2A, it's the first sentence currently reads, "The affected land, including all areas within the erection footprint, shall be restored to a physical state which is similar to that which existed prior to development, or to encourage the productive use of land for one or more uses allowed in the zoning district in which the mineral extraction application is located." And I would simply take out the which is similar to that which existed prior to development, or, and replace that with which is just take that out so that it is restored to encourage the productive use of the land for one or more of the allowed uses. And then in the last sentence, change status to intent. This again would require the operator to come to you when they first apply for a new operation to state what they think the intended reuse of that would be. But still, again, allowing them the opportunity anytime down the line, if they see a better way to do this, they could come back and amend that to you.
About 1 minute.
Okay? That is that on that one. Maybe it's not. I wanted to say, so they have various reuses. It could be agricultural, residential, natural, wildlife. There are other zoned uses. But this would allow you folks to help to stipulate what would ideally be in the reclamation plan that would facilitate that reuse. I brought a visual aid. This is what most gravel pits look like at the end of the day. They are like a boat you put hot dogs in with steep sides and a flat bottom. If this was intended to be an agricultural reuse, well, one of the things you might require is the slopes be workable with farm equipment, not so steep that a tractor couldn't plow it. If it was going to be residential, that there are large enough lots to have septic and well sites on the property. If it was going to be natural wildlife, it might facilitate or require certain species that would restore the habitat to a habitat that we're losing in our area, and maybe stump piles to create habitat rather than grinding them up. So I've probably expired my 5, but I have, I'm to number 2. Want me to continue or stop?
Kind of out of time, but what I recommend is maybe try to write them down, and
I have, Lenny.
and Beth maybe can send that out to us, and we can.
I have, you have it.
Yep. So if I could just clarify, Dana, what you're basically saying is what you've sent me in the email.
Yes.
Yeah, so yes, I do have it, and I can share that with you.
And you
folks.
actually have shared it, Beth, you have shared it with the planning board in the past. I've seen it
I
in
thought so.
attachments. But it just never, with all of the operators monopolizing the time, these never get brought up. And so I thought that, I was brought on board to kind of look for some of the environmental and reuse aspects of the ordinance, and I don't think that, I think that's getting shortchanged to some of the operators' complaints, which they're fine to talk about, but there's some others that I'd like to have discussed as well.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so,
We'll make sure we have that as part of our discussion next time.
Okay.
Okay, is there anybody else that I see David showed up. I don't know if anybody else wants to take 5 minutes to make some comments? No? Just a suggestion to the industry, we need more visuals like that hot dog boat. That was amazing. That works. I like that.
Was Dave going to talk about something?
Only if you needed him to. He's just here as a resource this evening.
Just here if you need me. If you have questions, I'm happy to step up to the microphone.
What did you bring up?
Well, as I mentioned, there was an extended back and forth conversation going on between Matt Pepin and Dave Parent. Matt expressing concerns about the proposed prohibition of new gravel pits and source water, water supply areas. This was all going on while I was buried in the middle of my grant application, so that I couldn't take part in the conversation. But after 2 or 3 back and forths, Dave made the recommendation to Matt that it was inappropriate to continue the conversation on email, and suggested that instead it happen with the planning board at the next time the issue is brought up.
I can take a minute to explain it.
Yes, would you please?
So actually how it started was an email conversation with Mark Curtis asking for clarification on the 1,000-foot radius, which I think we talked about at the last meeting. And so Matt emailed, I think, basically the same group, and said that he would like clarification on what would be considered a new operation within the wellhead zone, because he has one on Bernia Road that's probably, I'd say 2/3 of the pit is in the 2,500 travel zone, which is the lesser restrictive zone of the two. So I responded to that question, and then there was a couple other emails, and in the end, he said, well, that's really wasn't what I was asking. I'm saying that I don't think it's necessary to prohibit new operations in the wellhead zone. And it was at that point I said, well, if you're looking for a change to the proposed ordinance, really you need to bring that up at one of the meetings and make comments to the planning board. Doing that back and forth via email is neither proper nor is it productive for what he's looking for.
So if you have a proposed new well, which is on, you've already set that we may use this in the future. If somebody comes in and wants to put a gravel pit there, he wants to be grandfathered from not following the...
Well, the way I see it working is if somebody has an operation going and we develop a well, that the wellhead area is going to encompass their operation, or even the 1,000-foot radius is going to impact their operation. If they were there and they filed their Title 38 notice of intent and they have an approved site plan, they're an existing operation. I would not think it would impact them. But I think, and I don't want to speak for Matt, but I think Matt was going one step further and saying that he doesn't agree with not allowing new operations in the wellhead. I don't think he was saying that in the first emails, but at the end, that's what he was saying. So I suggested he submit that. Yeah, that's what I suggested to him, that and I'm surprised he's not here tonight, because he said he would.
Well, and I would like to just add one thing to that. Well, I think Dave was expressing in the emails back and forth that the Bernier Road pit would be, pardon me, Jamie, grandfathered. I would actually step that back, and I think that is an interpretation that the code enforcement officer needs to make. Based upon the language that's there as proposed, then the discussion can go forward, and if it's appropriate, you may want to make some additional modifications to that language.
And I thought that's what he was asking.
That's where it started, but you're right, it did kind of migrate into finally an expression of opposition to that particular provision that said no new pits in water supply areas. So we're really talking about two separate issues. The reason I didn't want to go further with this evening is because it requires some additional work, and the people who have an interest in the issue should be here having the conversation with the planning board.
So I guess we can just collect, so there's no other comments for tonight, I guess, as far as the public hearing is concerned, nobody else wanted to speak? Well,
Anyone who hasn't.
okay,
So you probably just want to carry the hearing forward to the next meeting.
we can do that. Is everybody all right with that?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so we'll do that. So we'll start for now, and we'll continue the public hearing at our next meeting.
Need a vote?
I don't think we do on that, do we? We don't need a vote on that.
No, I don't think so.
Public hearing.
I think you're fine. You're just leaving it on the table.
Yep. Continuation.
Oh, boy.
All right, very good. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate it. All right, that brings us to other business, planning director's report.
Okay, I've got three brief things to talk about this evening. The issue of whether the planning board wants to schedule a holiday party this December has come up. There are, so the first thing is that's a question for you. You may say yes, in which case or if you say no, we don't have to talk about it further. If you say yes, then I have some additional information for you.
Can we start now?
No.
I know, right? I'm giggling because I've been on the board for how many years now, and we've never had.
And you've never had one, right?
Never had one. Can this be the year we have one?
Yeah, I'd be game for it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I say yes every year, but it never happens.
So we tried to approach the vendor who we had approached last year and made arrangements with, and unfortunately, we couldn't have a direct phone call, so we've got an email request out. We've asked for a couple of times. The first one is to schedule it for your second meeting in December, which is the 21st. I can't tell you right now whether there'll be applications coming in or not. I can tell you that my experience, 42 years of doing this, is it's not a good idea to start significant stuff after December 15th. People are, and we're talking about the 21st, so it's days, before Christmas, and it can be tricky getting a quorum. It can be tricky for people to commit the time necessary. So I guess that's my backdoor advocacy for considering that date pretty seriously. The second option is to do a doodle poll, which we certainly can do. I specifically pulled any Tuesdays or Wednesdays out of the mix because there could potentially be city council meetings, design review committee meetings. And so we specifically asked not only about the availability of December 21st, but any of the Mondays or Thursdays in December. If any of you were to say, I can't make any of those, one or more of those Mondays or Thursdays, and the rest of you want to have as broad participation as possible from the board, we can drop that from the list and not pursue it further. So that's kind of what I wanted to get in front of you, so you could give Jan and me some direction as to how to go forward.
But in the past, you've also invited other people.
Oh, absolutely. So generally, it's the planning board that's invited, city council's invited, members of design review are invited, the various members of staff who are involved in the permitting process are invited. It's intended to be very informal. We have to notice it as a meeting because there'll be, 3 or more of you will be there, 3 or more of any of the other committee members would be there. That has not proven to be a problem. Nobody's crashed the party, so to speak, and if they did, I think they would probably be welcome. But it's intended to be a fairly informal kind of arrangement, where people share a meal together. Everybody pays for their own food, refreshments. It's mostly just an opportunity for you to connect names and faces and to build a relationship where you can feel comfortable talking with people.
And to not have any business on the table.
There will not be any business, or there cannot be any business discussed. That's one thing I would,
So sad.
Keep it light. Keep it light, keep it personal, and...
Bring your better half, too.
And you can bring your better half, that's right. And we will ask for an RSVP, although if you can't make it, and you can come anyway, and if you have to drop off or something, that's fine. We just try to do that so that we can give the vendor a sense of how many people will show up. And
Well, let's know the vendor, too. It's the place down by the airport, right?
yeah, I was trying to be a little circumspect with that, but yes, we have been looking at, we had made the arrangements with Pilot Cove last year. They were not open to the general public, and so that was one of the reasons we were feeling comfortable that we could do it, because it would just be people associated with this event. But the COVID numbers just started to go up right after we made the decision to do it, and so we canceled. But we thought it kind of a nice venue to do it at.
I'm on board.
Same.
All
So-
those in favor?
Okay, so what do you want to do about the date?
I think, my vote would be the 21st if we can swing it. I've already got the plan to be out.
Yep.
But it looks like Thursdays are tight, but I can make it work.
Say it again?
Thursdays are really tight, but I probably could make it work.
Yep.
This
But-
way, choice voting? Wednesday's the first choice.
It's only gonna vote once.
Well,
I can typically make
21st
any
is on the
date
calendar.
work.
Yeah.
I'm
I
sorry,
can make
Crystal?
any date work.
Okay,
I'm flexible.
No, 21st.
so I'm hearing 3 people saying the 21st?
Yep.
21st is good?
Yep, okay, so we'll go with the 21st. If we can't get the venue, then we'll look for another one.
What other venue, I was just trying to think of another venue that would accommodate.
It's tough to get a big enough
What's the
space.
total?
El Mexicano, we did it down there once. They
Yeah.
have a big back room.
Yeah.
Yep.
We did it over at Back Street once.
Yep.
Another reason not to do it on a Monday.
Oh, right, a lot of restaurants are closed on Mondays. Yep.
What is the total count that you are
I-
estimating?
I think the biggest we've ever had has been 23, 25 people, and
Okay.
usually it's less than that.
Think of-
Kind of depends, it depends how many people from other committees show. And by the way, if you are okay with this, I'd like to extend an invitation to Mike Casserly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So oftentimes, it'll depend on whether they bring their significant other, because that can double the number.
I wonder if Public House could also accommodate.
We actually, I think, talked with them about it, and I think they were not comfortable tying up so much of their space, but we'll look.
Okay.
One of the things we learned about the El Mexicano is that we really, because we were sitting in a linear fashion like this, is that we learned that we probably should do like a half-hour happy hour sort of thing,
Yeah.
where people were just not sitting there, but, milling around in the bar area, and it was more informal, because once you sat down in that sort of arrangement, you were kind of limited as to the number of people you could have conversations with. So we're learning, and then, of course, COVID got in the way. But I think in general, they've been well-received, and I think they do what they're intended to do. They allow people to celebrate a little bit. They also help break down some of those barriers between people who just have heard names but haven't attached them to faces and been able to have sort of a low-key conversation. Most of the time, you don't see anyone besides Matthew, Jan, me, Dave.
All the important people. Huh? I said all the important people.
That's right. But you rarely get to see Matt Hill. Occasionally, you get to see him. You do. Jamie's been with us more and more. Again, a lot of this has been associated with mineral extraction.
You
But
could zoom in, Jamie.
You know, and I know that when Ed Cormier, who used to be on the planning board and stepped back, you know, when he approached me last year about wanting to get re-engaged, you know, his first question out of his mouth, you know, was, am I going to be invited to the planning board's holiday party? So I think it's been well
You can
received.
twist his arm.
I think if I had said no, he might not have joined the design review committee.
Did we go to Mill 67 once?
Yes.
Yeah, we did have it at Mill 67.
Well, it's closed.
Yep.
That's funny.
I'm not
Here's-
sure you'd want to be in that venue right now.
Here's another option is, do we have to go out? Could it be something that could be catered, even if it was
Yep.
like here? I don't know.
We did actually talk about that as well, and we certainly could go that route. I
Never
think we
mind.
put it as our last resort because of just the logistical issues.
Yeah.
And again, remember, you know, we're not going to host this, we're not, financially. This is on your own nickel. And so that just gets a little bit more complicated in terms of ordering, or, you know, even if we did sort of a buffet sort of thing and everybody kicked in a certain amount of money, then you end up with too much food or not enough food. So we kind of set it aside in favor of going to a venue. But if we run through the venues, this is actually late in the season to be trying to do this. And so we may find that we're blocked out. The thing that's in our favor with the 21st is it's so close to Christmas that most people will have had theirs already.
Yeah.
Usually they all cluster around those first 2 or 3 weeks of December. But
McDonald's. McDonald's.
we can go to McDonald's, that's right,
Burger King.
but only if they've got their playscapes open. I want to go down the slide.
Yeah.
Now, is a potluck out of the question, or?
No, that's also another option. So just sit tight. We just wanted to get this started. We're going to see if we can hit the nail on the head with our first outreach.
Jamie's hands up.
Hi, Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Go, Jamie.
Just another suggestion is, I call it Lady still, but Oak Street Bistro in Alfred. We actually did a family Christmas party there last year. They have 3 or 4 separate rooms that you can be kind of in your own room, so it's not as loud and it's more intimate. It's not in Sanford, but it's really close. So just another suggestion.
It's a nice place.
Yep. Righty. Good. So I didn't want to belabor that, but I wanted to try to cover that. The second thing is we're coming into the season where we start planning for next year's administrative activities. And so a couple years ago, we made the decision that the adoption of the calendar would actually happen in December. So you'll see on the next agenda that we will have a proposed calendar. And the reason for that is, you know, we were at the meeting where the first meeting was supposed to be scheduled, and so, you know, we thought that was a little oxymoronic, and so we moved it back into December. So just beware, that's going to come forward. The second thing is sometime between now and either that meeting or the week after, I will send out a copy of the current bylaws. I think I'm going to try to do it with the December 6th packet, with the request that you review the bylaws, and they're pretty extensive. We've done a lot of work on them over the last several years, but inevitably there's 1 or 2 things that crop up over the last year that we think we need some clarifying language or new language. And so the request will be, and I probably am going to do this in a relatively short turnaround, which is why I'm making you aware of it now, because everybody's just, again, going to get really consumed with holiday preparations. And so I think what I'll probably do is put it in the packet for December 6th, and my request will be that you email Lenny and me with any suggestions about areas that need to be edited, added to, et cetera, removed, and probably ask you to get those comments back to me probably mid-month, like the 15th or something. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that.
Very good.
What's going on with the comp plan? I heard something, I watched the council meeting last night.
Until we resolve staffing issues, I think it's unlikely that we're going to get much work done on it.
You have to come up with a group of people.
Well, there is a recommendation out there to the city council. Boards talked about this several times, that the primary committee would be, because we're looking at largely an update here with some expanded areas, would be largely the planning board, no discussion as to whether that's the entire planning board or representation of the planning board, and then some targeted additions to represent different pieces of geography or interest groups in the community, but to try to keep it to be a relatively compact group. My experience has been you get too large and it doesn't work real well for a couple of reasons. One of the ones that's really pretty conflicting with trying to expand and engage the community is that when you get too large a committee, people feel like they're a bit invisible, and so they can drop off, and it's not going to be an issue, and actually you end up undermining the integrity of the committee. So the approach that I've advocated is that the advisory group is not the primary decision-making group. It's a facilitation of the public process. And so more happens in an interactive fashion with what will likely be proposed as hybrid meetings, community meetings, so that there would be, face-to-face opportunity for those that are more comfortable participating that way. But there also would be an online ability to participate for those folks who are less comfortable either physically coming to a meeting for whatever reason, whether it's health concerns or they're just not comfortable being in groups. And so we've actually do have somebody on board, Spatial Alternatives, who's recently, just it's been so long that they've now changed their company name, to assist us with creating a fairly robust online presence and integrating both that and the public process. So ultimately, rather than, excuse me, the advisory committee wordsmithing everything and, having internal conversations that are pretty limited in participation, that conversation intends to happen in a more public fashion, and when you get through that process, if there are remaining unresolved issues, then the advisory committee would step in and make specific recommendations. So if people want, I can recycle the information that we've presented in the past. The primary issue is that it's a staffing availability and conflict with major initiatives like mineral extraction. The next thing that's going to be coming your way is going to be implementation of the state's new affordable housing law, LD 2003, which requires implementation by June of this upcoming year. And so there's only so many pieces you can slice me into. I will tell you that things haven't worked out well with Kyle. And so he is going to continue to provide support through the end of January. But if you haven't noticed, it came out today, an re-advertisement for the planning position.
Anybody there?
It's really tough. I mean, it's just a really tough hiring environment. We're not the only ones struggling with this.
Is he going to be okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Good.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. It's an amicable parting of the ways.
Yeah.
But that means we're back in search mode. It's not as bad as it was, the search is, but the workflow is not as bad as it was before Kyle came on board, because he is continuing to provide support, albeit remote. So far, we've been doing okay with that. That's all she wrote.
Good job, Beth.
Thanks.
Any comments from the group? Nothing? I'll just say, I know Sanford was tested yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Had a pleasant incident at the high school. I think the community responded fairly well, though.
Well, and I tell you, the press that, as horrible as what happened yesterday was, Sanford really came off looking good in the media.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, not just the media. I mean, they did a wonderful job.
That's all I'm observing, but yes, absolutely. I mean, we were like deer in the headlights yesterday morning at the Site Plan Review Committee when there were 3 of us sitting there, and Jamie pointed out that Patrick wouldn't be there, and Deputy Chief Small wouldn't be there. And then we had some issues with some of our other people who had to deal with their staff, and so the meeting started, 10 minutes late, and, for a while, we were just sort of looking at the applicants and just saying, we don't know if this is going to happen.
Every time you heard a siren, it was like, I hope the hell they're not headed for Goodall to drop off a injured student.
Right, I mean, it was unfortunate. I was glad to hear, I don't think he's called chief anymore, but
Gagnon?
Bernardi?
Cessna, no, the state representative of the state police. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry. He used to be our police chief in Portland. But, hearing him talk I found a bit comforting. And I tell you, I would be glad if they found who did this and throw the book at them.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, the stress related to this and the potential for injury not associated with anything with an active shooter, but simply the craziness associated with the stress and fear that the kids are going through and the teachers and all of that, that somebody doesn't fall downstairs or, some other thing like that, get hit by a car. It's just a horrible thing. But
Yeah, that was just my observation. I thought the community handled it well.
Yep.
I think they did as well.
Are we all set?
I'm all set.
Yeah, we'll probably pass over on that for now, but I think we'll make a motion to adjourn. There's no work session tonight, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, second.
Oh, beat me to it. Think about a second down.
All in favor of adjournment? We got 5 hands. Okay, no
Those
opposition.
opposed?
Matt wants to stay.